Hello everybody, welcome to episode 190 of Shelf Viewer. Today we'll be going over the Witch's Forest arc of Black Clover. Now, I did take a little bit to read this arc, so I'm a little bit rusty on the first half of it, where the actual, attack on Kiten happens, or however you want to say it, or Chitin. It's Kiten. But yeah, so I'm going to kind of go over it quickly. So what we see as Chitin is three of the Shining Generals from the Diamond Kingdom show up, and Golden Dawn is deployed to fight them. We see as they go about doing their thing, they deal with the Shining Generals pretty easily. Like, they barely even have to deploy their captain, William Vengeance, or however you say his name. And we also get to see, use his new magical abilities, which is the Elven Sylph, which is named Bell. We also get to see as multiple of the Black Bulls get sent in because Asta's like, I want to be on the battlefield because even though my arms are wounded, I still want to go about and do this, and I want to get battle experience and stuff like that. So ultimately, Yami ends up sending. Well, Yami actually ends up going himself as well, but we see as Yami, Finral, Charmy, and Asta end up leaving Julius and end up heading down here. So, we kind of see as they assist a little bit, and we see as Charmy helps out, and Finral also ends up running into his brother, who is the noble, who is more powerful than him with spatial magic, and he doesn't have, I don't remember exactly, but yeah, so we see that. And ultimately, the Shining Generals are defeated. But during this time, while this is going on, we see as Yami ends up going to, William, and he speaks to them. We get some backstory from William. We learn that William is, in fact, the illegitimate child of a noble family. And he had a very rough upbringing at first, but then ultimately he was thrown into the swaths of the noble family after, I believe, after his father didn't have another heir, or after they died. I can't remember. But, yeah. And so we see how he kind of suffered throughout all of that, but ultimately he ended up awakening this cool, tree magic that he has. But, yeah. So, then, with that, we also get to see as the reason why Yami is here. Yami was here because he wanted to investigate William, because William had very similar key to Licht, and obviously a very similar appearance. But we see as William actually ends up taking off his mask and revealing that it was burned and all of that. But, yeah. So, that's kind of what happens at Kiten. Then we see as everyone kind of leaves, we see Charmy and Yuno have some interactions, obviously, and also Asta and Yuno. But then once they leave, Yami ends up stopping by in the capital. He's like, yo, I'm going to send you to this, the best doctor in Black Clover, not in Black Clover, but in the Clover Kingdom. Though he is a quack, we're going to set you up with him. And ultimately we end up seeing that Asta's arms, in fact, cannot be healed because they have been affected by the cursed magic by Veto and all of that. But yeah, so we then see as the Black Bulls ultimately learn of this, and they start going out searching for any way possible to cure Asta's arm because they feel a familial connection to him now. And we see as multiple people go off to places that aren't discussed, but we also see that Vanessa goes off to this mysterious place known as the Witch's Forest, which is the place of her origin. So we'll focus on that a little bit later, but she ultimately plans on going to the Witch's Forest and offering herself up so that the Witch Queen will ultimately heal Asta and being rewarded and gaining the reward of Vanessa rejoining her. But yeah, so we then also see as Noelle ends up going to this little abode area where she ends up meeting up with some people who have been defected from the Diamond Kingdom, and their names are Dominante, so just Domina. The dude's name, he's called Zell, but I think his name is actually Fanzel or something like that. And then we have Marielle. I think Mariella. And so we have these three, and they're ultimately there to hopefully help Asta, but they ultimately cannot. And then we see as Asta actually ends up going here as well, and they then discuss, I know they weren't there for healing. They were there, they were there for finding Vanessa, because everyone's like, where did Vanessa go? And they ultimately learned, they're like, we gotta go find Vanessa. And they knew that Domino had been from the Witch's Forest, so they ultimately ended up going here and speaking with them so they could gain them, go to the Witch's Forest. And so we see then as they head off to the Witch's Forest, all 6 of them, because Finral's with them as well. And once they head here, they ultimately have kind of a bit of trouble sticking in, or fitting in, because Zell is a bit of an exhibitionist, and he likes to get naked randomly. And so we see this ultimately ends up going bad for him. All the witches get on alert and everything. And we see as everything has to break out and go crazy and all of that. But we do see that Vanessa, in fact, did get to the witch and the Witch Queen, and she asks for Asta to be healed, but ultimately this does not end up going very well, since the Witch Queen is a perfectionist, and she's like, no, I will not, because you left me, and you're a very imperfect individual and all that crap, so she kind of goes a little bit crazy on her. But then after this, we end up seeing as forces converge on the Witch's Forest. We see as the Diamond Kingdom forces and the Eye of the Midnight Sun forces all pull up in the Witch's Forest for different reasons, but yeah, they are different reasons. I'm not talking about like this, but yeah. So we see all of these pull up, and then ultimately we see as the gang, the crew of six, end up meeting up with the Witch Queen as well, where they find Vanessa to ultimately free her. But then here we see as the battle starts breaking out, and ultimately Asta tells the Witch Queen, "Yo, if you will allow me to fight off your people, all I ask is that you will heal me." Or it's really just, if you will heal me, I'll fight off off the people here. So we then see as he is healed, and then the fight breaks loose. So we predominantly see as the main member of the Eye of the Midnight Sun that is here is Fauna now, or Fana, because Fana pulled up and she's going crazy, and we learned that in fact she has the ability of Salamander, and Salamander is one of like the four like very strong magical beasts in Black Clover, and she ends up using this power very effectively. We see as she now starts going crazy with it and all of that, and they're having trouble fighting her, but ultimately we see then as Noelle is able to pull out control of her magical abilities to help deal with this, and ultimately it does end up in fact doing very well, and Noelle is beaten back, not Noelle, but Fauna is beaten back a little bit. But yeah, so with that, we then get to see after she is defeated that they now have to deal with the Diamond Kingdom people, and we know that the defectors from the Diamond Kingdom, the three, have history with them. And then we see as ultimately Zell ends up going up to the main generals of this force, and we see that as in fact Mars and a character by the name of Ladros. And we kind of knew, well, we knew that Mars and them were here because we saw as Lotus, who was also at K10, came here as well and kind of scoped it out, and he saw Mars there, so we knew that Mars was here. But we didn't know about Ladros because we haven't met Ladros yet. But here we learned that, in fact, Zell was the teacher of Ladros and Mars while they were in the Diamond Kingdom, before they got what are called magic stones implanted in them so that they could be more effective killers and all that, and weapons of mass destruction. So we see as Zell kind of starts combating them a little bit, and he is doing pretty well, but ultimately we end up learning that Ladros can, in fact, absorb magic, and this is where the battle kind of starts going against Zell's favor. But yeah, so we then see as Ladros kind of starts going a bit crazy and all of that, and he's like talking about how he's going to destroy everything that Zell has built up, destroy his family and all that. He ultimately plans to kill, what's her name? Domina. But we see then as Mars steps in, saves the day, ultimately ends up saving Domina, and has now become a traitor from the Diamond Kingdom because he regained his memories at the dungeon arc, as we knew. And so he feels some sympathy for Zell. And so with this, we see as kind of the fight commences between all of them, and it is not going very well. But we also see as Asta ends up joining in this fight, and Asta is not really capable of doing well against Ladros, because Ladros doesn't, he's very overpowered, and he can stay long distance from Asta. And he's doing very well against Asta. And we then see as it kind of plays out a little bit more, and then ultimately it plays to the point in where Ladros ends up releasing a massive explosion, which does damage to essentially everyone, and everyone's essentially down for the count, but Asta is able to get back up and continue fighting. And so, oh wait, hold up, I can't remember the exact order of things. No, okay, yeah, so there was something that happened before this, sorry to get ahead of myself. But yeah, so during this, we also see as before Asta and all of them get included in this fight, we see as Fauna ends up getting back up, and she starts going to town again. But we see as, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about this. But okay, so what happened was they had essentially knocked out Ladros from the fight for a little bit so they could focus then on Fauna again. We see as Fauna gets back up, and she is using immense magic. And ultimately, we then see as Mars gets his eyes on her. He's like, hold up, Fauna? Is that the real Fauna? Now, we presume that Fauna is a demon from this because she has a third eye like Veto and Licht. But we don't really know, because now we see that Mars recognizes her, and she is the same Fauna that was in his childhood who he had to kill, kind of like the Village of the Hidden Mist graduation in Naruto. But yeah, so we see this, and then ultimately she starts fighting, lashing out and all of that, and she prepares to use this massive attack. But ultimately we see as Mars ends up going up to her, embracing her, and this ultimately ends up breaking the magic spell that Licht had placed on her to give her her third eye, and she was in fact not a demon. And so we see then as they kind of make amends, we see that Fauna is in fact very, I guess, well-tempered, or I guess calm-tempered, and she's in fact not this massive destructive beast that she was making herself seem to be throughout all this fight. But yeah, so then we see as Ladros ends up coming back out. He in fact absorbed the attack that was sent at him rather than getting knocked out by it because it was an attack from Zell. But we see as he gets up and he releases massive power and it essentially wipes everyone out for the count. But Asta is able to get back up and he starts fighting Ladros again. And with this, we see as he ends up kind of fighting for him a little bit, but then he ultimately is able to get one of his swords into the shoulder of Ladros. And with this, Ladros appears to be down for the count, and he's begging for Asta to let him go and all that. But ultimately, Asta's like, "No, I'm not stupid. I'm not doing that." And then with this, we see as he uses his last bit of magic to propel himself away, grab hold of Fauna, and use this newfound magic to pull the blade out of him, so he no longer is affected by the anti-magic. And we then see as he grabs Fauna and he's like, okay, if you don't work with me right now, if you don't expel the energy that you have within you, then I'm going to kill Mars. And so she ultimately ends up freaking out a bit, and this energy expels from her, and Ladros ends up absorbing all of it. And so we see that he is now a very formidable foe, and he is preparing to do some immense damage. But while he's preparing to do all this, he ends up preparing, and then we see how we get a perspective actually of the Witch Queen. And the Witch Queen explains how she infused some of her blood in Asta when she gave him a transfusion. Now, he got kind of beat back after Ladros gained this power. And so we see that he's on the ground a bit, but then the Witch Queen is like, okay, I infused his blood, and I'm going to try and awaken something within him. So he ultimately ends up having this dream where he sees a demon, and we then see as he gets this almost new form where half his body turns into black. And what she essentially did was she, I guess, release some of the inhibitors that Asta had within his anti-magic flow. Now it's flowing completely throughout his body rather than just kind of in his sword. And so he essentially becomes this anti-magic being with his right side, I believe it's his right side, being black, and he sprouts a horn up on his head and a right-sided wing. And now he prepares to go and fight Ladros, who he deals with handedly. He beats Ladros very easily, breaks the magic stone in his head, so he's essentially no longer under the control of the Diamond Kingdom. So it appears that everything's going to be hunky-dory, everything's good. But then the Witch Queen reveals her true vice. Since she is able to divine, she knew that Vanessa would bring the object of her desire to her. So we then see as she ends up taking over Asta and spreads out this weird blood control area throughout the zone that they're fighting in. And this totally crucifies everyone, these blood crosses. And she's like, you know what? Now that I have what I want, I'm going to kill all of y'all. So she ends up seeking Asta via the control of her blood within him, and ends up seeking Asta on Noel first. And we see as he goes up to Noel and he's preparing to fight. But then we also see as Vanessa is able to kind of enact or awaken a new ability within her. And this new ability is the Thread of Fate ability, or the Red Thread ability, which allows her to essentially kind of perform something similar to what King Crimson can do in a way. That's all only way I really know how to explain it, because what happens is she can make others see possible events that play out. No, not King Crimson, but kind of Gold Experience Requiem, where it makes you see death over and over again. It can make people see events over and over again, but she doesn't necessarily see it herself. I know we'll get more explanation on it further on, but it's kind of hard to describe at the moment. But essentially, what happens is we see as Asta kills Noel in multiple ways. We see he straight up decapitates that John in the first way, and we see other multiple deaths. We see as the Witch Queen ends up sending him at Finral at one point, but none of it ends up working because what essentially Vanessa keeps doing is resetting it to the point where the witch attempts to control Asta. And so what's crap? What would it be like then? I guess it kind of would. I don't remember King Crimson stand. Oh my gosh, King Crimson stand up. Kind of like Yoshikage Kira. So when we see with crap, Bites of the Dust. Yeah, kind of like Bites of the Dust, where if an event happens, then it resets time. Yeah, kind of like Bites the Dust. Okay, there we are. There's your JoJo's comparison. But yeah, so I think Bites the Dust is it. Yeah, sheer heart attack's a little tank thing. So yeah, Bites the Dust is what he gets after getting penetrated with a stand. Not. Oh my gosh, never mind. But yeah, so we see the. Sorry for the train wreck here, but I'm just kind of I guess spitballing. But yeah, so after this, back onto the actual Black Clover stuff, we see then as at one point the Witch Queen forces Austin to hit himself with the blade, but this ultimately ends up breaking her magic with the anti-magic in his blade, so he's able to get free then, and Vanessa then uses her red thread to set up everything to where ultimately the Witch Queen breaks down and she's like, you know what, I've been beaten, and Vanessa has awakened, and she tries to control Vanessa, but she's unable to control Vanessa. And so, ultimately, she ends up surrendering, and she's like, you know what, I'll heal all y'all, do whatever. And we get a bit of, brief backstory on Vanessa, where we see how she was raised by the Witch Queen. And we also see a description of how Vanessa's powers work. She mentions about how the thread of fate will really only help people who she perceives as family, and it didn't help the Witch Queen or allow her to get her way because of her not being perceived as family, though she is Vanessa's mother, essentially. Since she did raise her, but she did not raise her, and as in raising her well, because we see that she was in prison for most of her life, forced to prove upon her thread magic, while the Witch Queen was kind of dismissive toward her. And then ultimately see how she ended up becoming free, which Yami busted into the witch's forest one day, ultimately broke her cage, and then allowed Vanessa to go. Then we see how Vanessa kind of joined along with the Black Bulls and started to cherish the family that she developed there. And then we see as it kind of concludes. We see then as everyone ends up heading back to the Black Bull HQ, where Austin is revealing to Yami that his arms are in fact fixed, and Yami's like, cool. That was all his reaction really was. But yeah, kind of see as all that plays out and everything. Also, I forgot to mention the conclusion with the Diamond Kingdom people. We see as ultimately the witch ends up giving Mars a vial of blood that he can use to control the current king of the Diamond Kingdom. And his point for being there, the Diamond Kingdom's point for the Emperor, was to heal the king. But now what Mars is going to do is he's going to give this tincture to the king to now control him so that he can develop the Diamond Kingdom in a way which will allow it to prosper. And so the little trio of Diamond Kingdom defectors are going to keep Fauna with them until the kingdom is reformed. And we also see this Lydros is going to in fact go with Mars so that he can gain power within the Diamond Kingdom. And for what the Black Bulls got for their victory, they actually got what the Eye of the Night Sun was looking for, which is the magic stone that is in the Witch's Forest. And this magic stone resided upon the earring of the Witch Queen, where she ultimately ends up giving it to him as a reward and all of that, and kind of just as an apology. So they now have another of the magical stones under their belt. So, with this, we then end up seeing as, like I said, it kind of ends with all that. We also get a description about how the magical stones essentially immensely enhance the abilities of the magic users. And yeah, that's kind of like the end of the story there. One thing I did forget to mention was we get a brief description on how, the demons work, how Licht works. So apparently the demon was actually not a race. The elves were the original race, and they created the demon. And Asta's blades come from the leader of the elves. So there's a bunch of connections to the elves, especially with the Eye of the Night Sun. And Licht is probably an elven entity, and somehow the powers of the elves can be bestowed upon others through elven magic. But yeah, so that was kind of just some cool, I guess, information that we acquired. But yeah, like I said, that's all there really was for this arc. I don't know if I like it more than the Seabed Temple arc. It's really good. And I really like the scene where Noelle is killed by Asta, because that's just really cool, unexpectedly kind of brutal scene. But I'd say it's about tied with Seabed Temple, because both are really good and high quality. I just feel like the Kitten part of this arc was kind of unnecessary, but it also was at the same time, so we can learn that Asta could not have his arm sealed, which drove the entire arc of the story. But yeah, or the story of this arc. There we are. But yeah, so that's all there really was for the Witch's Forest arc of Black Clover. And that's all I really have for episode 190 of Shelf Review. So, thank you very much for watching.